In fines, possible criminal charges for its executives as the company apologizes for rigging 11 million cars to help it beat emissions tests.
Certain diesel models were designed with sophisticated software that used information including the position of the steering wheel and vehicle speed to determine the car was undergoing emissions testing. Under that circumstance, the engine would reduce toxic emissions. But the car was rigged to bypass that when it was being driven. Emissions increased 10 to 40 times above acceptable EPA levels.
Wow. 10 to 40 times greater than the EPA allows. That is the worst thing Volkswagen has ever done. Is something you might say if you'd never heard of World War II. But maybe the surest sign of how much trouble Volkswagen is in is that people at the very top have stepped down. The CEO resigned on Wednesday after scrambling to do damage control, saying he was endlessly sorry, which sounded great until it turned out he was only 10% sorry but had rigged his mouth to artificially inflate his sorriness. And meanwhile, Volkswagen's US chief had an apology of his own.
Let's be clear about this. Our company was dishonest. And in my German words, we have totally screwed up.
Yeah, but totally screwed up are not German words. And the German language has many beautiful phrases to describe situations just like this, such as Geschäftslügentraurigkeit, which means roughly the sadness that comes from business-related lies. Or Benzinwolkenwartebestimmung, which translates as shaming one's father involving clouds of gasoline. It's a beautiful language, it just sails off the tongue. And by the way, while that man's apology may have sounded sincere, it's worth noting he was speaking at an official launch party for the 2016 Volkswagen Passat, meaning that shortly after saying sorry, he said this.
Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the evening. Up next is Lenny Kravitz.
Okay. Ending your apology with "up next, Lenny Kravitz" does not scream sober contrition. It screams, "We asked Bon Jovi and he said no." Volkswagen's brand has been badly damaged, and frankly, their new ad campaign is not exactly helping.
Guten Tag. We at Volkswagen would like to apologize for deceiving you with our vehicles, which is why the 2015 Jetta now comes fully loaded with new, not at all fraudulent features, such as golden brakes, the ability to feel human emotions, and a stylish interior made of 100% Ravenspeaks and pterodactyl skin. Plus, in a brand new feature, if you drive a Jetta off the side of the Golden Gate Bridge, you will not die. That's a Volkswagen guarantee. And if it's speed you're looking for, the 2015 Jetta contains a powerful 2.0-liter TDI clean diesel engine that will suck your dick. You've heard me right. The Jetta will bring your engorged genitals to a shattering climax. Also, and we really mean it this time, the Jetta is very good for the environment. And even if it isn't, remember, it sucks your dick. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Lenny Kravitz.
But when DraftKings in particular claims that it's not gambling, it's worth noting that not only have they applied for and received a gambling license in the UK, but according to the Nevada Attorney General, their website once had search engine optimization phrases with multiple instances of the word betting. And sites usually use alt text like that to tell search engines what they are. It's why this show's website is tagged with British Nerd, Brit Dork, News Goof and Birdie Fact Funny Man. So here's the question. How can DraftKings say they are not gambling and 100% legal? Well, daily fantasy sites often point to one particular piece of legislation, the 2006 Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, or UIGEA. It's to be a very small exception, but through that small carve-out, two multi-billion-dollar businesses have emerged. It's like those lawmakers built a doggy door for a beloved pooch, and then Daily Fantasy came bursting through like a pack of wolves, saying, "We are dogs. It's a doggy door, right? That's for us. We're legally dogs. Woof. Right? Tell them. Woof. Woof. Step aside. Woof." But even the guy who co-wrote that law says it wasn't meant to apply to what fantasy sports have now become.
The U.S. congressman who drafted the 2006 legislation used by DraftKings and FanDuel as proof of their legitimacy is upset. Former lawmaker Jim Leach says it is, quote, sheer chutzpah for the daily fantasy sports sites to pretend the law makes them legal.
Okay. First of all, chutzpah is actually pronounced chutzpah, but But the idea that daily fantasy sites are using this law to claim they're not gambling is not chutzpah, it's horse shit. Because that law, interestingly, that law never said fantasy sports were legal. It just said they weren't explicitly illegal under that specific law, but that each state's gambling laws would continue to apply. And in general, most states determine whether or not something is gambling by asking whether it's more of a game of chance or more a game of skill. And if being a game of chance could make you gambling and therefore illegal, it's no wonder that daily fantasy sites like to describe themselves like this.
They are games of skill, and we can prove that through data that we have.
If skill is a predominant factor in the game, then it's a game of skill. And we can show that our game, like traditional fantasy sports, it is skill predominant.
It's legally critical to these companies that they be perceived as games of skill. That's why, every time they talk, you hear the word skills more often than during an underground rap battle. In fact, just this Friday, Daily Fantasy supporters actually held a protest rally outside the New York Attorney General's office with a familiar chant.
Game of skill! Game of skill! Game of skill!
Now, if you're thinking it's a little odd that ordinary fans were chanting something so legally specific, there may actually be a reason for that.
We're employees of FanDuel themselves because their offices are right here in Union Square.
They used their own employees as protesters. If you are trying to make the argument that you're not a shady, gambling-related company, maybe don't openly stack the deck in your favour. Which is not to say that daily fantasy does not involve skill. It actually might involve a lot more skill than they would like you to be aware of, because this summer a study revealed some shocking numbers.
91% of the profits were won by just the top 1.3% of players during the first half of the baseball season. 85% of players were losers.
85% of fantasy players were losers, which is staggering. In the general population, that number is 40% at best. It essentially breaks down like this. 40% losers, 40% arseholes, 14% weirdos, 5% decent human beings, and then, of course, Beyoncé. And if you are wondering what it takes to be part of that big winning 1%, let me show you.
Albertson made over $200,000 playing fantasy sports last year. In drafting his fantasy teams, Albertson spends hours each day studying his own homemade algorithms that track thousands of up-to-the-minute statistics and player projections. Projections that even factor in the hourly weather forecasts and wind conditions in each stadium.
This is every pitcher basically in baseball. We've got dozens of rows of statistics.
Yes, fantasy sports are effectively dominated by numbers nerds with sophisticated algorithms. Nebraska, a state you think about so little you didn't even realise that's not Nebraska. This is Nebraska. Come on, it's your country. That's not okay. Nebraska had some big and surprising news this week.
Nebraska is now the first conservative state in more than 40 years to abolish the death penalty.
That's right. You will no longer be sentenced to death by lethal injection in Nebraska, unless you count drinking their subsidised corn syrup through a straw, which is slow acting, but it will get you in the end. Nebraska has actually become the 19th state to outlaw the death penalty, but it wasn't easy. Their governor and enormous human thumb, Pete Ricketts, was staunchly opposed to the whole idea.
My words cannot express how appalled I am that we have lost a critical tool to protect law enforcement and Nebraska families.
Words cannot express? Why don't you try? It's a written public statement, you giant shaved owl. And incidentally, they picked the perfect photo there. Just look how happy he is at the idea of lethal injections. Now, interestingly, one of the reasons lawmakers voted to repeal the death penalty was purely practical, as it's become increasingly difficult to obtain the necessary drugs for executions. And watch how Ricketts tried to overcome that objection.
Yesterday, Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts announced the state has successfully purchased drugs to administer the death penalty.
So he's essentially saying, hey guys, great news, I found the murder drugs that I've been looking for. How is that good news, you unpeeled hard-boiled egg with teeth? But it turned out anyway, his plan was a little flawed. First, the drugs he found were located in India and cost nearly $55,000 in taxpayer money. And that's expensive. We are talking Adderall in the Yale Library during finals week expensive. And secondly, there was this.
FDA tells us, quote, with very limited exceptions, which do not apply here, it is unlawful to import this drug. and FDA would refuse its admission into the United States.
And that is pathetic. Because saying that you've got access to high-quality drugs from India and then not being able to deliver is embarrassing enough when you're a high school junior trying to get into your prom date's pants. It is downright humiliating when you are the adult governor of a state trying to desperately kill. For a quick recap of the week, and we begin in Michigan, the giant hand holding Detroit back from trying to fight Canada. This week, Michigan had some political drama.
After a 14-hour session at the State House, Representatives Todd Corser and Cindy Gamrat are no longer in office. Representative Corser announced his resignation effective immediately. This was at 3:12 this morning during that marathon session. And then just about an hour later, the House voted to expel Representative Gamrat.
Wow. Kicked out of the State House at 4 in the morning. That is the legislative equivalent of throwing all their shit out on the lawn. And let me explain to you why they did that. It's because these two staunch family values Republicans were fucking each other. And according to those in their office, they were not being that discreet about it.
There had been rumors about an affair between the two of them swirling around Lansing for quite some time. The staffer said that they spent a lot of time in their back offices, which are shut off from the rest of the office. She would bring him a pillow and tuck him in and a blanket, and they would take long walks together during the day. They would have these long, personal, romantic hugs during the day.
Okay. Two things there. First, no hug is romantic. A hug is a brief high five between two sets of ideally disinterested genitals. And second, did you just say she would tuck him in? Because that's gross. Don't creep everyone out with your weird Christian rock version of infidelity. Just fuck like normal terrible people. Now, look, so far, this is just a run-of-the-mill sex scandal. But this story starts to get amazing when you learn how Representative Corser attempted to throw people off the scent.
State Rep Ted Corser admitted to circulating an anonymous email claiming he had been caught with a male prostitute. He did this apparently in order to muddy the water in case his affair with a fellow state rep was exposed.
It's true. He sent an anonymous email accusing himself of a fake liaison with a male prostitute, so no one would believe the real liaisons he was having with his own colleague. That is the worst plan I've ever heard, and I'm including trickle-down economics, the pull-out method, and the plot of The Parent Trap. Now, it gets better. In his fake email, Corser accuses himself of, and I quote, male-on-male paid-for sex behind a prominent Lansing nightclub, which is already magnificent, only the best Lansing nightclub for his fake gay hookup. He then attacks himself for being a bisexual, porn-addicted sex deviant. But it gets still better, because the only reason we know Corser wrote the email is that one of his aides secretly recorded him explaining his plan. So, congratulations, Fox. You're famous internationally for shouting. By the way, they don't even get Fox in India. They just hear them from across the ocean. But that's... No. The point is, slow down, India. Let's take a progress report. How exactly close to American media have you come? Do you have a ludicrous number of people shouting at each other?
Mr. Kadir wants to say something here. 1 second, Mr. Kadir, let's go back to the debate.
Can I talk? Yes, I want to talk.
Okay, that's one. But do you have elaborate, senseless election graphics? Incidentally, that is from CNN India, and a little fact check. India has just over 800 million voters, so their own graphic is wrong by the entire population of Brazil. You truly are a member of the CNN family. But let's get back to it. Do you have self-righteous anchors repeating themselves over and over again?
And how dare you bring RSS all the time?
How dare you say I take money? Simply. How dare you say I take money? How dare you say I take money?
You provoke.
How dare you say I take money? 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 How dare you say I take money?
How dare you say
You say this to me, how can you say I take money?
Speaking to people.
How dare you say I take money, Miss Lakey?
Holy shit, they've stolen our formula. But you've forgotten one crucial detail here, India. Because if you really want to Americanize your media, there's one last thing you have to do. And that is stop covering the Indian election. And now this. Right, I'm John Oliver. Thank you for being with us. Just time for a quick recap of the week. And we begin in Israel. Drama-wise, the opposite of Canada. Now, Israel had their election this week, and despite being behind in the polls, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party won resoundingly, which some credited Netanyahu's last-minute swing to the even farther right.
The Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday said on his watch, there's not going to be a Palestine, there's not going to be a two-state solution.
Wow. OK. So, no two-state solution then. But hold on, let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe he only said that because he's planning on a three-state solution. Israel, Palestine, and bonus Palestine. We don't know. We don't know for sure. But look, let's accept that in part, due to that promise, Netanyahu looks like he's here to stay. The problem that he now has is, how is he going to convince the US that he is a credible partner for negotiation, given that he explicitly said he would not allow a two-state solution, but only a one-state solution?
Have to change.
Now, that's pretty impressive, because that is a Michael Jackson level of walking backwards. He just demonstrated the verbal gymnastics of a guy caught being too honest on his first date. I don't want kids. Wait, hold on, do you want kids? I love kids! And in the right circumstances, I could absolutely see myself having them. I never said I don't want kids. This is why what Netanyahu just said is so amazing. He was trying to escape something that he'd said that had left him almost no wiggle room. How do you get out of that? It's impossible. I've got to say, if he somehow escapes this, he should go on the road as Netanyahu-Dini. Words cannot hold him. But let's move on to Starbucks, the acoustic Alanis Morissette album with a... I'm John Oliver, host of Last Week Tonight, HBO's highest budget show, which is a surprise until you learn that everything you see, including me, is entirely computer-generated. And come on, how did you not figure that out? My face is textbook Uncanny Valley. None of this makes sense. We are still on hiatus this week, but I wanted to briefly return to speak about a very important topic, birds. Or, as I call them, cat feeders. Birds are symbols of love, wisdom, and, of course, human trafficking. And as the weather cools down, birds are going to start their seasonal migration, which is, of course, when they travel to warmer climates in order to feed, grow, and attract a mate. It's their version of eat, pray, love, except birds are too dumb to realise that everything they needed was inside them the whole time. But before the migration begins, I have a brief message for the birds of the northeast as they begin their journey southward. Are you listening, birds? Here goes. F*** you, birds! F*** you! I hope you never come back! To me, every single bird is just a shitty sequel to the dinosaurs, and we'd be better off without you. And yes, I'm talking to you, geese. You look like ducks that played football in high school and never stopped going to the gym. And you know what? You're not off the hook either, parrots. Oh, what? I'm supposed to like parrots just because they can talk? Basically, every human being talks, and I hate most of them. Oh, and while I'm at it, ostriches, you can go straight to hell, you first-draft flamingos. You look like a giant ball of lint trying to upshit out a huge leathery snake. Oh, and then there are penguins. Yeah, you guys are actually fine. I've got no problem with you, penguins. No problem. But I'll tell you what, you get a pass. Lifetime pass for you, penguins. But you know what? F*** you, swans and pelicans. You both look like monsters from a fish's nightmare that came to life. And as for hummingbirds, you're just obese bees in need of a nose job. And do you know what? Actually, ostriches, come back. I'm not done with you yet. Your eggs are too big. And you look like piñatas filled with grocery coupons and dried meats. Just fly the f*** away from me. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't. Your failures are the one thing birds are known for. Now, as for the rest of you birds, I hope all you disgusting sky mice enjoy your tropical getaways, while the rest of us face the frigid torment of winter, and I hope each and every one of you flies into a wind turbine on your way north next spring. Yeah? I hope... F*** you, birds! We are back on HBO September 25th. Until then, goodbye. You fly away. You fly away. Home of more red hair than Deborah Messing's shower drain. Well, Ireland had an interesting 24 hours this week following a bizarre court ruling.
The possession of a range of psychoactive drugs has been made legal temporarily following a ruling by the appeal court. The ruling means possession of drugs including ecstasy, magic mushrooms and so-called head shop drugs is currently legal.
Yes, multiple drugs were accidentally legalised in Ireland for a day. Although I will say this, if you were waiting for ecstasy to become legal before trying it, you're probably not the type of person who's going to really take to ecstasy. You might want to stick with taking NyQuil and spinning around 3 times. It's basically the same. But the best detail in this whole story was the underlying case that prompted the ruling, and I'll let an Irish newscaster fill you in.
A case was brought here before the Court of Appeal this morning by a man prosecuted for possession with intent to supply the legal high meow meow.
Yes, there is a drug called meow meow. I'm guessing side effects include aloofness and a heightened interest in string. Oh, you gotta try meow meow, brah. The laser shows are incredible. Finally tonight, social media. That thing Cher almost understands how to use. Almost. This week, a new social media app got a lot of attention.
It's apparently like Yelp for people. A new app called People, with a double E, allows you to rate and review every person you know using a 1 to 5 star rating scale. Friends, coworkers, romantic partners, even your exes. Oh.
Oh, wait, that sounds absolutely awful. Yes, there is apparently a new app coming out that's being labelled as Yelp for People. And it's the kind of bullshit mashup that Silicon Valley loves, like Snapchat for music, or Skype for sandwiches, Tinder for geese, Shazam for Kazam, and Uber drivers for scuba divers. And as you might expect, an app that allows people to rate you as a human being without your consent has been met with some concern. But its creators, frankly, do not understand why.
We want to clarify that this isn't like a judging website. We don't want to judge in the sense of being mean, or we want to actually bring the better out in people.
We want to be given the opportunity to prove to you that the world is predominantly good, filled with people that absolutely love you and want to lift you up.
I'm sorry, have you ever been on the internet? It's basically, the internet, let me try and explain to you what it is. The internet is basically a faucet that dispenses hate, racism and the occasional sad orgasm. And yet, the creators of this app remain completely oblivious to its lack of appeal. Watch this video that they themselves posted of them pitching their app to a cab driver.
We're building the Yelp for People, where you can actually go in our app and rate and comment on anybody you know, professionally, personally, or romantically. What do you think? Wow, right? That's a good reaction. Wow, that's a start. That's a reaction.
Yeah.
Oh, that is not a good reaction. Generally, when you tell someone your idea, you don't want them to respond with the sound of their soul leaving their body. But wait, it gets better. As backlash to this app started to spread this week, in what I'm sure is a complete coincidence, one of the app's founders took to Facebook to ask, anyone know how to prevent people from posting on the comments of a company Facebook page? That's right. The creator of an app that would allow people to give each other unsolicited criticism wants to block unsolicited criticism. She is opposed to the very core of her own idea. It's like if the CEO of Airbnb hated sleeping on strangers' semen. It would make no sense. That's what his business is. And that actually illustrates the main problem here. The internet essentially exists so that people can say vicious things about each other. And we don't need another app to facilitate that. What we need is something which helps stop people from getting hurt. And that is why we have launched a new actual website called screamintothevoid.com. It gives you all the catharsis of typing hateful things about people into the internet with none of the human consequences. I'll show you how it works. The way it works is you simply type whatever awful thing you're thinking, hit the button at the bottom of the page, and the message will be deleted forever. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. It feels good to get it out, and no one has to hear it. I encourage you to use it. And if you still somehow feel an inexplicable desire for an app that will judge you, we'd like to introduce you to an even less harmful alternative.
Nowadays, there's an app for everything.
They're absolute people rate restaurants, hotels, and now, because the world is a ceaseless nightmare, they're absolute people rate each other. And look, no one wants to be rated by random people. You want to be rated by someone you can trust. That's why we're launching Peeble, the only app where you can be rated by actor, director, and producer Mario Van Peebles.
This sister's mysterious. I like it. 4 stars. Can you get hepatitis from a picture? 1 star. And that's a 5-star cat with a 3-star guy.
Getting started with Peeble is simple. Download the app, upload a photo of yourself, and wait for Mario Van Peebles to assign you a rating from 1 to 5 stars based on his initial impression of you.
I can tell that girl gets it. 4 stars. 0 stars. Is that Steve Buscemi?
Than these two. Now, this week, the United Kingdom experienced a moment of history.
Well, a lifetime achievement today for Queen Elizabeth. She is now Britain's longest-serving monarch.
That's right. Elizabeth II has the title of longest-serving queen, although the title of fiercest queen still goes to New York's own Kelsey Grammer. You go, Kelsey. You own that stage. The Queen marked her special day by opening a train line in Scotland, which one correspondent used a little too well as a metaphor for what she has actually achieved.
While the train used to inaugurate the new line was a rolling anachronism, she, somehow at 89 years old, is not. But this day wasn't about a train, it was about a queen who just keeps chugging along.
Oh, you cannot compare Queen Elizabeth to a train. For one thing, people need trains. Trains still serve a practical purpose in the modern era. You're being mean to trains. And that was actually the second most inadvertently dismissive thing that reporter said.
In 63 years, 216 days on the job, you learn a thing or two about how to do it. If the requirement is to be seen, wear bright clothes and a big hat, and try to look like you're enjoying yourself.
She's standing right behind you. I know it's hard to tell because she's pointless, but still. Now, I will say, for the record, she has not done too well over the years in the whole try to look like you're enjoying yourself department. Her resting expression is total contempt. But you cannot deny she has worn the shit out of a lot of hats. From this one, which resembles the bat mitzvah cake of Scarsdale's youngest Prince fan, to this one, which is what a Las Vegas birthday party clown would wear to Space Church, to this one, apparently constructed from the receipts of all the stupid hats she's ever bought, fashioned into an even stupider hat. Essentially what I'm saying is, congratulations, Your Majesty. You have spent 63 years doing a job that could have effectively been done just as well by a styrofoam mould of a human head. And now, this.
And now, some more descriptions of the Queen's ridiculous hats. A baby Smurf's uncircumcised penis. What mold thinks about when it masturbates. The exact thing a 19th century French prostitute would wear to Tim Burton's funeral. A hairball vomited up by Britain's least healthy cat. A dollop of sour cream attending the Academy Awards. A penis that's literally died of embarrassment. And that it
was actually one of two major anniversaries, the other being the 25th anniversary of the protest in Tiananmen Square. Not that you would know that if you lived in China.
China's government has done its best to erase the massacre from their history books.
Try searching Tiananmen Square on China's heavily monitored internet, and results are censored.
The 25 years passed and we still don't know what happened. I think that's not cool, I think.
Not cool?
Yeah, that's not cool.
Not cool? Wearing socks and sandals is not cool. Ordering fries for the table and then eating them all, that's not cool. Erasing a massacre is chilling. Now, protesters have tried to subvert the government using phrases like May the 35th instead of June the 4th, but that just caused the authorities to clamp down even harder.
Banned words gets longer and longer, so this year words that were banned included things like today, this day, sensitive day, even the phrase when spring turns to summer.
No! You can't ban when spring turns to summer. I need full access to the Chinese market if my romance novel is going to succeed. And that is... No one wants that. Nobody wants that. The most ingenious attempt at subversion was this. When a Chinese soap opera actress's supposed sex video leaked last month, an activist group edited the video to add in messages encouraging people to show up at Tiananmen Square for the anniversary. That is brilliant. Can you even imagine how smart we would be if we snuck information into our pornography? I want you so bad. Actually, it's badly, and that's just one of 6 grammar rules I'm anxious to cover during this fornication. Unfortunately, pornography is illegal in China, so the government took it down. So what we need to sneak the message out there would be something both legal and massively popular among China's youth.
Friends lives on in the heart of the Chinese capital, where a Central Perk replica's been built by Du Xin.
We want to be like one of the characters in the show. So.
It's about the caring between friends.
I'm crazy about friends.
Yeah. China is, for some reason, absolutely obsessed with Friends. And did you know that the Chinese character for obsession with friends is the same as the one for opportunity? Because, with that in mind, this might help young people in China remember Tiananmen Square next year.
Gentlemen, pick your category. Fears and pet peeves. What is Monica's biggest pet peeve?
The government killing people.
Correct. Ladies?
Same category.
According to Chandler,
how many died in the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests?
Anywhere from 200 to 2,600.
that is correct.
But why'd they kill those guys? They wanted free speech and government accountability.
We move on to Toyota, makers of the '92 Camry, where you got your first backseat handjob. Toyota is famous for making dependable vehicles, but this week we learned something surprising about who exactly has been depending on them.
The United States wants Toyota to explain how ISIS is getting their hands on so many Toyota trucks and SUVs.
Their propaganda videos show convoys made up mostly of Toyota Hilux pickups and Land Cruisers. And now ABC News has learned that a U.S. Treasury counterterrorism unit is asking Toyota to help them determine how so many of its trucks, both newer and older models, have ended up in the hands of ISIS.
Yes. It seems that Toyotas are being used as instruments of death, which is it's a bold move because traditionally death on wheels has very much been GM's brand. Now, that's kind of their area. Now, as you would expect, Toyota is claiming to be baffled as to how this has occurred.
Toyota says it doesn't know how ISIS is getting its hands on these trucks.
That's right, David. In a statement to ABC News, Toyota says it is not aware of any of its dealerships violating the company policy not to sell to terrorist groups.
Hold on. You actually felt the need to make not selling to terrorists official company policy? Is that in the handbook under things that should go without saying? So, don't sell to terrorists, don't accept magic beans as payment, and don't sell to a cat who walks in with a ruby in its mouth. Brian, what are you trying to do, selling a Yaris to that cat with a ruby in its mouth? You can't do that, Brian. I don't care if it's a cash offer. The amazing thing is, this is not a new story. Terrorist groups love Toyota vehicles. Back in 2001, the New York Times reported that Osama bin Laden likes Toyota Land Cruisers. And Newsweek once ran a story called Why Rebel Groups Love the Toyota Hilux. And in the light of this news this week, you would think Toyota would at least change the name of one of their cars.
Incidentally, Toyota does sell a make of car called the Isis.
Oh, come on, Toyota! You're giving ISIS built-in vanity plates. It seems Toyota might have a genuine problem here, because by the looks of it, ISIS seems to really like their cars.
Other brands like Mitsubishi, Hyundai, and Isuzu have also been spotted in these ISIS videos, but nothing even remotely close to the amount of Toyota vehicles. In fact, a former U.S. ambassador to the UN told ABC News that, regrettably, Toyota has almost become part of the ISIS brand.
Wow. At this rate, we are just a few months away from ISIS-owned Toyota dealerships, complete with fully armed windsock guy. Come on down to ISIS Toyota. Prosperity gospel and seed faith, specifically how some preachers use it to extract money from the vulnerable. We then launched our own church, Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption, and asked you, praise be, Praise be. And we asked you to send us money at this address. And to be honest, slightly more of you responded than we were expecting. And before I show you just how many, let me stop, because I firmly believe in the separation of church and show. So I'm going to hand over now to Pastor John Oliver, Mega Reverend and CEO. So please, at home, bow, kneel, sit, stand, or whatever the fuck it is our church does. And let us all together, once again, go to church. Brothers and sisters, thank you so much for joining us. Praise be, praise be. First, apologies to you. My wife, Wanda Jo, cannot be with us this evening. She's at our summer parsonage in Hawaii for a week of spiritual introspection and occasional parasailing. Praise Wanda. Praise. Praise to Wanda. Last week, we asked you to send us your seed offerings, and I would like to show you a little of what we received, because look at this harvest you gave unto us. Praise unto you. Praise. If I may, just a little feedback on some of the blessings that you've sent in. I think we made it clear seed faith is metaphorical, and we did not want your actual seeds. Which is why it was so disappointing that someone sent this gigantic bag of seeds to us through the mail. It was the biggest bag of seeds I'd ever seen, until the next day when this actual bag of seeds turned up. So, let me reiterate, we want your actual money. Call this number, 1-800-THIS-IS-LEGAL, and give it to us. Do not send us seeds, and also, do not send us beef jerky, as someone else inexplicably sent in this week. Also, let me be clear, we want US currency. I should have mentioned that last week, because we have received currency from all over the world, including this $100 trillion bill from Zimbabwe. I was actually genuinely excited about this and was about to send 100 trillion blessings your way until I checked the exchange rate and found out that this is worth about 40 cents. So now, I wouldn't even bless you if you fucking sneeze. Okay? But for those of you who have sent us US currency, great blessings unto you. We have received thousands of envelopes with thousands of dollars, some featuring heartwarming notes, such as this $5 bill attached to a letter reading, "Take my seed, you rat-faced bastard." Praise be. We also received multiple checks, including this one for $65 billion, which you may have sent in as a joke, but guess what? We're fucking cashing it. So who's laughing now? Anyway, keep your money coming in to this address, and remember, the more money you send in, the more blessings will be returned to you, and that is still something I'm amazingly legally allowed to say. That is our show. We are off for the next 2 weeks. Waiting for Putin to make his next move regarding Ukraine, and last week we got a dire warning.
Ukraine's President Poroshenko told his military last week that it must be prepared for a full-scale invasion along the border with Russia. He had earlier said that summer was the most likely time for such an event.
Yeah, well, to be fair, of course summer is the most likely time. Even people who live in Russia don't want to visit Ukraine in the winter. But here is why that won't happen. Putin is notoriously terrible at turning up on time. And if you need proof, just look what else happened this week.
The summit between the Pope Francis, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Off to a chilly start. The Russian leader was more than an hour late. That is not cool.
It's not cool. He kept the Pope waiting. Just think about how rude that is. He forced the Pope to sit in there for an hour making awkward small talk with God. Well, I don't know where he is. How have you been? Did you see LeBron's penis? Did you see that? Of course you did. You probably made it. But look, this was not a surprise. Putin was once 14 minutes late to meet the Queen. He kept John Kerry waiting for 3 hours, and he has always been this way. His own ex-wife once said, "I remember standing around in the metro. The first 15 minutes of lateness are okay, half an hour also fine, but when an hour goes by and he's still not there, you start crying." Which sounds terrible, although, to be fair, that's also how you could describe an hour with Vladimir Putin. But either way, it's ending in tears. So, all I'm trying to say is, just relax, Ukraine, because if you were genuinely... us dive straight in with the 2016 election, or as you may know it, I don't even believe in past lives, but I must have done something really fucking terrible in a past life to deserve this. I'm sorry, 2016. This week has yet again been dominated by Donald Trump, which is irritating in and of itself, because WikiLeaks continues to release emails connected to the Clinton campaign that raise serious issues, from that campaign's behaviour to the fact the hack may have come from the Russian government to how journalists should respond to stolen documents. But it is hard to focus on any of that when the man who could be our next president is now one unearthed 90s-era Teen People interview away from being on a sex offender registry. Because Trump has had quite the week.
The Republican presidential candidate facing a barrage of accusations from multiple women who say Trump touched them inappropriately, kissed them against their will.
The first time, it was just like a kind of a quick hug and a kiss on the lips, and I was shocked just because I was like, what was that? I've never had anybody greet me like that. I just kind of excused it as, well, I guess maybe that's how people on the East Coast greet each other.
Okay, well, first, that is horrible, but for the record, that is not how we on the East Coast greet each other. The way we greet each other is very simple. We don't do it. We stare at the ground and hope the other person moves away quickly so we can go back to muttering under our breath without seeming crazy. That's how we do it on the East Coast. This has frankly been a week of upsetting allegations regarding Trump, and I'm not going to make you sit through all of them again, because all you really need to know about the man is that this was his response to one of his accusers.
Believe me, she would not be my first choice, that I can tell you. Man. You don't know. That would not be my first choice.
Now, 2 weeks ago, I told you that if you looked up, you could see rock bottom. Then, last week, I told you that if you looked up, you could see the place we were a week ago. Well, this week, if you look up, all you can see are the thin plywood boards surrounding us on all sides, because we are in a coffin and we are buried alive in the horror that is this election. And let us dive straight in with the 2016 election, or as you may know it, I don't even believe in past lives, but I must have done something really fucking terrible in a past life to deserve this. I'm sorry, 2016. This week has yet again been dominated by Donald Trump, which is irritating in and of itself, because WikiLeaks continues to release emails connected to the Clinton campaign that raise serious issues, from that campaign's behaviour to the fact the hack may have come from the Russian government to how journalists should respond to stolen documents. But it is hard to focus on any of that when the man who could be our next president is now one unearthed 90s-era Teen People interview away from being on a sex offender registry. Because Trump has had quite the week.
The Republican presidential candidate facing a barrage of accusations from multiple women who say Trump touched them inappropriately, kissed them against their will.
The first time, it was just like a kind of a quick hug and a kiss on the lips, and I was shocked just because I was like, what was that? I've never had anybody greet me like that. I just kind of excused it as, well, I guess maybe that's how people on the East Coast greet each other.
Okay, well, first, that is horrible, but for the record, that is not how we on the East Coast greet each other. The way we greet each other is very simple. We don't do it. We stare at the ground and hope the other person moves away quickly so we can go back to muttering under our breath without seeming crazy. That's how we do it on the East Coast. This has frankly been a week of upsetting allegations regarding Trump, and I'm not going to make you sit through all of them again, because all you really need to know about the man is that this was his response to one of his accusers.
Believe me, she would not be my first choice, that I can tell you. Man. You don't know. That would not be my first choice.
Now, 2 weeks ago, I told you that if you looked up, you could see rock bottom. Then, last week, I told you that if you looked up, you could see the place we were a week ago. Well, this week, if you look up, all you can see are the thin plywood boards surrounding us on all sides, because we are in a coffin and we are buried alive in the horror that is this election. But incredibly, Trump's remarks were actually in keeping with the tone he promised this week.
The Republican nominee proclaiming on Twitter he is a free man. Quote, "It's so nice that the shackles have been taken off me, and I can now fight for America the way I want to."
Yes, the shackles are off, which is actually an apt metaphor, as it calls to mind both Frankenstein's monster and a rabid dog. And before I start to run through what Trump has said this week, keep in mind, we take this show at 6 p.m. So here is a rundown of some of the things he feasibly could have said between now and the point when we air. All those clowns people keep seeing would be appointed to his cabinet. He can get the best deals with China because he is in fact 100% Chinese. The border wall is going to be constructed out of Rosie O'Donnell's bones. Abortions are caused by low-energy storks. And finally, it's not rape if it happens on a yacht. But here is what he has said as of now. First, he burned bridges with his own party, calling Paul Ryan weak and ineffective, and then, at campaign rallies, dialed the knob up to full-on conspiracy theorist.
Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty. This is a conspiracy against you, the American people, and we cannot let this happen or continue.
Holy shit! That is not the kind of thing that a presidential candidate says. It's the kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that a man in a tinfoil hat screams inside his concrete bunker because he thinks his soup cans have been bugged by the lizard people in the White House. But Trump isn't just rampaging against his political opponents, he's rampaging against his own campaign. When one journalist tweeted that at a recent rally, a Trump supporter was standing in the back shouting, "Stay on the issues," his own campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, responded, "That was me, I was there." And even if she meant that as a joke, it's not a great indication of how much control she has over her candidate. It's like she's already thinking ahead to her campaign tell-all book, or possibly her tell-all trial out. And finally this week, Turkey. A country, a bird, and the meanest thing you could call someone in 1956. This week, Turkey's leader, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, caused a big stir in Germany.
Chancellor Angela Merkel has accepted a request to prosecute a comedian who mocked the Turkish president on German television.
Now, Erdogan had said that he wanted to take legal action against this comedian because this comedian read a poem on air that made very, very strong remarks against Erdogan.
He wants to lock someone up over a poem. Why doesn't he just do what the rest of us do about poetry? Listen to it politely because it's how Sarah has chosen to cope with the divorce. If you are wondering how on earth an insulting poem can be against the law, it turns out Erdogan may have dug up a 19th century German law stating anyone who is guilty of an insult to a sovereign or regent of a state shall be punished by imprisonment. And for the record, let me just say, I am very glad America does not have a similar law, or I would be in a maximum security prison right now, and I would not thrive there. But Angela Merkel is in a bit of a bind here because clearly this is a free speech issue. But the problem is Erdogan is critical to Europe's plan for processing migrants and refugees. And it seems he has an incredibly thin skin.
For Recep Tayyip Erdogan, satire is no laughing matter. Since he became president in 2014, almost 2,000 cases have opened for insulting the president.
It's true. Nearly 2,000 legal cases have been opened since he took office. That's more than 3 a day. And some of these cases have been unbelievably petty. In October, a physician lost his job and now faces a 2-year prison sentence for sharing a meme suggesting Erdogan's facial expressions resemble golems, which, by the way, they just do. That's not a criticism. It's not even a joke. It's just a biological fact. And last April, a journalist received a suspended prison sentence simply for liking a Facebook post that insulted Erdogan. And liking something on Facebook should never be a crime, unless maybe you like a co-worker's beach photo at 3 a.m. That is the one exception, because that is creepy. And look, Erdogan is the one at fault here. He makes it way too easy to make fun of him. For example, in 2014, he gave an interview in which he said this.
You can see that what Israel does to Palestine, to Gaza right now, has surpassed what Hitler did to them.
Holy shit! That is very offensive to Israel, and honestly, it's a little offensive to Hitler, who has to be thinking, are you fucking kidding me? What do I have to do? And that same year, he caused a bit of a stir with this remark.
You cannot bring women and men into equal positions. That is against nature.
Now, that statement is bad enough, but he said it at an international conference for women. The only way that could have been any worse is if he then said, but that's enough of me. Everybody, please welcome Grammy-winning recording artist Chris Brown. You're welcome, ladies. Chris Brown. And when Erdogan tried to smooth things over after that, it didn't go so great.
Erdogan did try to offer a compliment of sorts. He says he used to kiss his mother's feet because they smelled of paradise.
Even at an international foot fetishist convention, the sentence, my mom's feet smell like paradise, is going to get you some weird looks. Look, Erdogan is clearly not a pleasant individual, which is why it's so hard to be sympathetic when you see this actual footage of him having his balls stomped on by a horse. Now, we've shown you that footage before, and we'll probably show you it again. Because the point is, Erdogan, if you are so anxious not to be mocked, try not suppressing speech in your country and others, and generally acting in ways... But after the president endorsed Hillary on Thursday, this happened.
Trump reacted to the president's endorsement this afternoon, tweeting, Obama just endorsed crooked Hillary. He wants 4 more years of Obama, but nobody else does. Clinton's campaign responding, delete your account.
Now, hold on. You might have enjoyed that tweet. Frankly, many did. It has over 500,000 likes, but I would argue that getting a lot of likes does not necessarily mean you've accomplished something good. Incidentally, that is a sentence anyone under the age of 20 should frame and hang in their bedroom. Because there is 2 problems with telling Donald Trump to delete his account. First, he's never going to do that. Even when he's been dead for 50 years, he'll still somehow be tweeting from beyond the grave with, met God, very disappointing, dopey beard, can't even lift a heavy rock that he himself created, sad. And second, you just moved this fight onto his turf, which is a huge mistake. Hillary was dominating news coverage this week, and even those who were speaking out against her were talking about substantive issues like women's history and gender equality. And because Trump is an ego goblin who feasts on verbal filth, that national conversation, much like a department store sold out of gloves in boys' sizes, was of no use to him. But as soon as she engaged with Trump on Twitter, the fight was back on his turf, and no one fights better there.
Trump responded, and I'll read to you what he said on Twitter. How long did it take your staff of 823 people to think that up? And where are your 33,000 emails that you deleted? All right, so she really seemed to walk into that one.
Yeah. She absolutely did. And that right there is the problem. Hillary, you are not going to beat Donald Trump at social media. His tweets are the Tom Cruises of tweets. Short and unhinged, but you kind of can't look away. And just like that, Hillary went from a pioneer and a trailblazer into a minor player in an online spat.
Hillary demands Trump delete his account.
That Twitter war, a preview of how ugly the fall fight could be.
The words delete your account are fighting words.
It's just smack talk. Yeah, I didn't even know what that means, but apparently our producer said that's what kids use to, like, say they don't like you.
Well, actually, it's what kids used to say. Because the minute it was tweeted by a 68-year-old presidential candidate, I'm pretty sure they moved on to whatever the new phrase is, whether it's eat a gerbil, or snap it up, Snoopy, or not in my taco truck. But if this is how the next 5 months are going to play out, Clinton has got a problem. Trump's mastery on social media is unprecedented. He misspells words, overuses caps, passes along unvetted information, and is overtly racist. He's basically Twitter's id made manifest. Whereas for her part, Hillary Clinton has been very much hit or miss on social media, with excruciating mistakes like posting 7 things Hillary Clinton has in common with your abuela, or changing her Twitter avatar so that Rosa Parks was sitting at the back of her logo. She took real heat for that, and yet just a couple of weeks later she changed her logo again, this time attempting to honour Kwanzaa like this. And come on, at least remove the arrow in the logo. Because this actually looks like the campaign is saying, please move away from the Kwanzaa celebration. But for true toe-curling tone deafness, nothing could beat one particular attempt she made to engage young people online. That's right. 3 emojis. Because nothing says, I will seriously listen to your concerns, like saying, hey, I'm pretty busy. Can you just condense your thoughts into tiny pictures of ghosts, dolphins, and sex eggplants? Now, the rest of this campaign is going to be depressing. If the two people running for president, a task requiring a grasp of nuance and complexity, repeatedly stoop to pandering and flame-throwing online. And it seems that we are going to need a shorthand way to express our disappointment and disgust, which is why we have created this gif of a vomiting Abraham Lincoln. It is on our Twitter feed right now, and it is all yours to have. Because whenever Clinton's campaign tries to hashtag engage us, or Trump says something awful, I think it's going to be pretty useful in articulating what we're all wanting to say. Recap of the week, and we start tonight with the NSA, the most obnoxious record collectors outside of hipsters who insist that vinyl sounds warmer. Last month, you might remember, we spoke to Edward Snowden about the Section 215 of the Patriot Act, which authorises the phone records programme. It's up for renewal at the end of May, and this week, there was some surprising news.
The big debate over government surveillance continuing to roil, the House passing a measure today that would effectively stop the NSA's mass collection of phone records.
Holy shit! A meaningful bill passing with broad bipartisan support. It's like discovering yourself sexually for the first time. I don't know what this sensation is, but I think I like it, and I want it to happen again. Yes, but the House overwhelmingly passed the USA Freedom Act. It is by no means perfect, but it does put some new limits in place to protect Americans' privacy. It now heads to the Senate, where it is opposed by Mitch McConnell. But he might be facing an uphill battle because members of both parties support reforming 215, as do the President, the Director of National Intelligence, and a federal appeals court which recently ruled the programme had never been authorised by the law, which is alarming. It's like finding out the guy who just gave you a prostate exam wasn't a doctor. Hey, what's going on here? That is Jim, the janitor with a latex fetish. Get out of here, Jim. Get out of here. That's strike two, Jim. But Mitch McConnell desperately does not want to change anything and instead has offered the lamest possible plan.
What I would rather see, George, is a couple-of-month extension of the existing program.
A couple of months? That's pathetic. Asking for more time for no apparent reason is exactly what you do when you know you're about to be dumped. His bill might as well be called the "Hey babe, can we talk about this when things have died down at work a bit" Act of 2. Work in open plan offices. I would take a fucking beaded curtain just so I don't have to directly observe Carol clip her nails. Do it at home, Carol! This year, one particular wall has gotten a lot of our attention.
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border. That's a Trump wall, beautiful wall. I will build the greatest wall that you've ever seen. If they ever put my name on, I want a gorgeous wall. You know? The Trump wall, oh, will that be a beautiful wall?
Yes, Donald Trump wants to build a wall on the US-Mexican border, and based on his tone, he also wants to f*** that wall. The wall is such a fixture of his speeches and so popular among his supporters at one of his rallies, and, I mean, that's kind of incredible. The only group of people more excited about barriers are high school health teachers. Oh, that's right, cool guys and cool gals. When you're horny, there is nothing better than a good dental dam. It feels exactly the same. It doesn't. It doesn't. It really doesn't. The border wall is one of the few policy proposals Trump has talked about in detail. So instead of mocking or dismissing it out of hand, tonight, let's take a serious proposal by a serious presidential candidate seriously. And first, let's put aside the potential racism and xenophobia involved here. We can come back to that later. And instead, let's focus on the practicality of whether and how it can actually be done. And let's start with the cost. When Trump first started talking about this, he said it would cost a lot, but not a lot.
Let's say the wall costs $4 billion. You know, they say $10 billion. That means $4 billion, if you know what you're doing.
Okay, so he's saying he could build a wall at 40% of what it would cost others, which I would say is an insane magic trick if I thought his tiny fingers could wrap all the way around a magic wand. So, actual photo. Actual photo. But since then, his estimate has grown.
It's a wall. The wall's going to cost $10 billion. Maybe 12, depending.
Okay, so we've gone from $4 to $12 billion. Donald Trump's margin of error is the entire GDP of Moldova. But still, fair enough. We're now at $12 billion. But to truly know the real cost, we're going to need to know what the wall is going to be made from. Now, if only Donald Trump could explain that to me like I'm a child.
You're going to build the wall? What's it going to be made out of?
Oh. Hey, that's a good question. Lift him up here. Bring him up here.
What are the walls going to be made out of?
I'll tell you what it's going to be made of. It's going to be made of hardened concrete, and it's going to be made out of rebar and steel.
First, Trump is holding that child less like a human being and more like a cat he just gave a bath to. But second, to be fair, rebar and steel. OK, that is a clear answer. I appreciate that. Now, the amount we would need would depend on the height of the wall. Unfortunately, Trump has been unclear on that, suggesting numbers ranging from 35 to 90 feet. So let's work with his lowest estimate, a 35-foot tall wall, which Trump has said we would need around 1,000 miles of. Now, according to one estimator and construction economist, that would cost $10 billion for the concrete panels and $5 to $6 billion for steel columns, including labour, plus another $1 billion for concrete footing for the columns and a concrete foundation. So that's at least $16 billion. We're already $4 billion over his largest budget, and we've only just gotten started here, because those materials are heavy, and you're going to have to transport them into many areas that are currently inaccessible to construction vehicles. So that same expert estimates another $2 billion to build roads so that 20-ton trucks can deliver those materials. And that's not even getting into another 30% or so for engineering, design and management. So now we're up to around $25 billion, anywhere from 2 to 6 times Trump's estimates. But wait, because we're still not done. All of that is just building the wall. The Congressional Budget Office estimated for a similar project that wall maintenance costs would exceed the initial construction costs within 7 years. So it's a big, dumb thing that only gets more expensive over time. It's like getting a pet walrus. You think it's stupid now. Wait until you learn what a bucket of sea cucumbers costs. You've not prepared for that. But whatever the cost is, Trump claims he has got a way to pay for it.
Mexico is going to pay for the wall.
Concerns breast implants. Some are against them, others believe they're fine in rare cases, and many believe you should be able to get them whenever the you want. Sorry, did I say breast implants? I meant abortions. Tonight's main topic concerns abortions. And look, before you change the channel, I know this is a polarising topic. Although, interestingly, when the website Vox asked people in the street for their opinions, the issue wasn't quite as binary as it's usually presented.
I wouldn't, but I can't choose for other people.
I'm pro-life. I think when a baby gets a heartbeat, that should be the cutoff point. That's just my stance. I'm not the kind of guy I want everyone to follow my stance.
OK, well, not needing anyone to follow your stance is a healthy attitude to abortion, and it's also a terrible attitude with which to lead the Rockettes. You do you, Bethany. You do you, girl. You do you. The truth is, people's opinions on abortion make up a spectrum. But most of us believe it should be legal in at least a few circumstances. In fact, only 19% of Americans told Gallup they thought it should be completely illegal. And if you are in that 19%, you are frankly excused from watching the rest of this. But do rejoin us at 11:29, because once I'm done talking about this, we'll all be watching a video featuring a bucket of sloths. And I promise you, it is almost violently delightful. But until that time, the rest of us really do need to talk about abortion laws, because wherever you are on this spectrum, whether you, like me, believe that women should have the right to choose, or whether you believe abortion should only be allowed in a few circumstances, then this story should concern you. And here is why. Since 2010, new state laws have contributed to the closure of about 70 abortion clinics. And these 4 states are down to exactly 1 abortion clinic each. That's right, Mississippi now has 4 times as many S's as it has abortion clinics. And if you're thinking, how is that possible? Well, it's in no small part because the key Supreme Court decision concerning abortion is no longer Roe versus Wade. It's the 1992 Planned Parenthood versus Casey ruling that said states can create restrictions as long as they don't place an undue burden that places a substantial obstacle in the path of a woman seeking an abortion. Meaning women can be asked to jump through a few hoops, just not too many. Which might sound a little less insulting if those weren't also the rules for a dog agility course. And the vagueness of that ruling has allowed states to introduce dozens of what some have called trap laws, or targeted regulation of abortion providers, though their supporters, to an eerie degree, all characterise them somewhat differently.
I just wanted to reiterate that this is really all about protecting the health and safety of women.
Yeah, but when you're that insistent about women's health, it starts to sound suspicious. It's like having a folder on your computer called Definitely Not Porn. You're not... Since it was annexed by Russia, and last weekend there was a celebration concert featuring pretty much the last person that anyone was expecting.
Freedom to believe in what you believe in. No man has the right to condemn another man for believing what he believes in. Thank you.
In case you're wondering, that is not Bono having an allergic reaction. That is Steven Seagal. And incredibly, that wasn't even the weirdest annexation-themed entertainment that the people of Crimea experienced, because the day before, a Russian motorcycle gang called the Night Wolves produced a dramatic retelling of the Crimean crisis, and it had everything. Dancers forming a flaming swastika? Check. Robots vomiting red paint onto their drums? Check. Man running around on fire? Check. Guy doing motorbike tricks in front of confused violinists? Check, check, check. The whole thing looks like Lenny Riefenstahl hired a colourblind pyromaniac to choreograph a Spinal Tap-themed Cirque du Soleil performance at the request of Satan himself. And you know...